Okay folks, so for the last couple of weeks we've been looking at a whole variety of different areas, and then that's going to take us on to the next couple of weeks looking at a variety of different volumes. Now this week should be quite straightforward, hopefully you'll find everything quite straightforward. We're just looking at volume of a cuboid, which obviously we've done before, and volume of a cylinder, which the majority of you have done before as well. We'll take that on a little bit next week and look at volumes of prisms and maybe volumes of pyramids and spheres as well. We'll see how we get on. So first thing we need to remind ourselves of, or learn perhaps, is our two formulas for volume. So the volume of a cuboid, or the volume of a cube, remember, is length times breadth times height. Okay, so we've got that formula here, length times breadth times height. And the volume of a cylinder, sorry guys, the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h. Okay, and we'll look at why that formula is later on. We'll look at where that comes from. The pi r squared is obviously like your area of a circle, and that's linked to that. And then the h is your height. Now, what you do also need to remember, guys, is sometimes you might be given the diameter of the cylinder instead, and you'll need to half that to get the radius. And we'll do an example with that problem in it. So, first of all, just a couple of quick questions on cubes and cuboids, just to remind you of what we're looking for with our answer. We should always have our formula written down, just like we do with area. You can write LBH, or you can write L times B times H. Remember, it doesn't really matter, it means the same thing. Length times breadth times height, 7 times 5 times 4 then in this case. Okay, and we're doing all this work with a calculator this week. So you just grab your calculator, type in 7 times 5 times 4, and we get 140, and it should be cubic centimetres. Remember, we're looking at a 3D shaped volume, so it's cubic centimetres. Our next shape is a cube, but we can still use the same formula, length times breadth times height. All we need to remember is the fact that a cube has got all its sides the same length. So this is just going to be 4 times 4 times 4. That's what we're going to have to work out on our calculator, and we get 64. And again, this one is in centimetres, so cubic centimetres. So the first exercise you're going to be working on is just looking at cubes and cuboids like that. And there'll be a few wee problem solving questions in there, but hopefully you'll manage that. The second exercise is on cylinders, and then you've got some work on my maths that you can do with all of that as well. Okay, now this first cylinder here, we've got, remember our formula, so we need to write that down first of all, pi r squared h. Now pi, you can use the pi button on your calculator, or you can use 3.14, it doesn't matter. Okay, you'll get slightly different answers depending on what you use. Okay, but it's not going to be ridiculously out at this stage. So pi times the radius here is 3, so pi times 3 squared, which means 3 times itself, and then times 7, and then you need to type that into your calculator, either like that, or as pi times 3 times 3 times 7. If you can't find the squared button on your calculator, just write it as 3 times 3. So we've got pi times 3 squared times 7, and I get 197.92033, and so on. And then we're going to round our answer sensibly, double check whether or not each question you're doing asks you to round it to a certain number of decimal places. This one I'm going to round to 2 decimal places, so I'm going to have 197.92 cubic centimetres. Okay, and again, look at my lines of work, and I've got my formula, I've got my numbers in place of the letters, I've got my unrounded answer, and then I've got my rounded answer. Okay, and then just one more example. Volume is pi r squared h. Now with this one, look at this. This is actually the height of the cylinder. Okay, the height is kind of the distance between the two circular faces, if you like. So actually in this case, our height is going to be 3.1. But also the other thing that's a little bit weird about this one is the radius. We have been given the diameter of the circle. Look, we've been given the diameter from there to there. We want the radius, which is only half of that. So the radius is going to be half of 2.4, which is 1.2. So make sure you're paying attention to when you need to use the radius that you've definitely got the radius and you've not got the diameter. Okay, so we're typing in pi times 1.2 squared times 3.1. I'm just going to write that again because it's not particularly clear there. Okay, so pi times 1.2 squared times 3.1. Type that into the calculator and we get 14.0240 and so on. So 14.0 would be good here, 14.02. And this one is in meters, so this will be cubic meters instead of cubic centimeters. So as I said, guys, you've got a couple of examples with that. You've got some exercises on My Maths as well to do, and you've got your homework sheet. You might get a wee bit stuck with some of the textbook questions later on that are a wee bit more problem solving, so just let me know if you do and we can go over that. Okay, but otherwise you can just get on with it.